All right, welcome back to another exciting adventure right here on Radio Wasteland, the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm your host, Chauncey Haworth. This is my co-host, Kara Kittrick.
Hello.
Kara, what's the news from the Wasteland?
A study of 605 mostly white children in Rhode Island shows that kids born after January 2020 may have measurably lower IQ scores than those born before. Potential factors they suggest for this effect include work stress for the parent and decreased ability to provide childcare, since children of parents with high levels of education were much less likely to suffer this effect. This study was published ahead of peer review and therefore has not yet been replicated by other scientists.
We're getting dumber kids. So the heading for this title implied that it was COVID's fault, but really the implication here is that the situation that COVID has created is at fault.
Right. And we talked about this a little, not on air. I think this is probably bogus. Or not bogus. Like I don't think anyone's lying to us or anything. I think when you see a study, it's published ahead of peer review, which means obviously it hasn't been peer reviewed. It hasn't been replicated. It's not even really done. It's like the first draft of a novel kind of thing. And stuff like that is only published in the first place as sort of a first look for other scientists in the field to be like, this is what people you know are working on. Mm-hmm. Not this is a real fact we've uncovered. Like, this isn't even a real study. And even the scientists who worked on it, I'm sure would tell you that too. I'm sure they would be like, yeah, we found some interesting stuff, but we're not done. So my thinking, 9 out of 10 chance this is a statistical artifact of some kind, and it's not even a real thing. Right.
Right. Yeah. When I heard this and then I caught some of it from you, I thought, man, this could be spun a lot of ways. You know, white kids getting dumber could have been the title.
Right. Well, the freaking headline on Fox News was not study published ahead of peer review shows something that will probably not even be true.
Right.
The headline said kids born during COVID are dumber. You know, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was. And people only read the headlines. They aren't going to look at the article and be like, oh, published ahead of peer review. And even if they do see that, they're not going to know what it means because no one knows what it means. I only know what it means because I happen to have read about it recently and sort of read about how this is a way that studies that aren't real studies often, you know, still get passed off this way in the press. So I think the story here is that the media sucks.
You know, so what do you think we do about this mixed messaging? I mean, you know, Fugazi has this line, they didn't come up with it, but it doesn't matter what you're selling, it's what you're buying. And, you know, we're buying it. You know, they're obviously, here we are buying it. We're currently buying it. We took this article and we're now spreading it.
Yeah, no, I don't see the media changing anytime soon. So I think it's up to people to practice better media literacy. Which is harder and more time consuming than not doing that. But I think with stuff like this, it's still not that hard. Like, read the articles. Don't just read the headlines. That's a start. How long does it take? Like, this article is like, what, 500 words? How long does it take to read that? A couple minutes, maybe. So...
Yeah, well, apparently for these new white kids, it's going to take a little longer.
God. And it's a sample size of 600. Oh, my God. Like, that's nothing, you know? It's nothing, and it's not demographically. It's not representative.
Were these people vaccinated? I mean, how is a baby that's a year older able to be... I don't even understand how you can get the IQ of a 1-year-old, but
right.
But on top of that is the implication here that they didn't have the childcare and therefore they didn't make their kids smart, or is the implication that they were vaccinated and their kids are dumb?
I think it's the former. I think it's kind of like, because because we know that like reading to children and stuff makes them smarter. Just enrichment, I think it's just lacking enrichment. But also your point about IQ is completely true, because I'm pretty sure that, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that like IQ tests when it comes to very young children are not exactly an exact science themselves.
Well, they're hugely fallible with adults. So I assume that they just get more and more fallible as they go down.
Yeah. It might be the opposite of that, though. It might be that they're better for kids. It's one way or another, and I can't remember which it is. So
right, because maybe adult people are tainted in their belief systems, and therefore we have to find things that they don't understand to challenge them on to solve the problem. Where a kid has a whole lot of things that are new to them that we can, maybe that makes sense, I guess.
Like I said, I don't remember which way it is. So I feel like we're providing a great service to our listeners in terms of media literacy, because they have to go and look it up because we aren't telling them crap.
Yeah, I'm not telling you nothing. Go look it up.
You're right. My technique's good, huh?
Matthew Taylor Coleman, a follower of Illuminati and QAnon conspiracy theories and owner of a surfing school in California, was charged Wednesday with murdering his children. Conspiracy theories had led him to believe that his wife was passing, quote, serpent DNA down to their kids, and he didn't want to, quote, see them grow into monsters.
This is some wild stuff, man. Some serpent DNA.
Yeah,
I mean,
serpent DNA.
You had me at serpent DNA, I have to say,
I mean, yes, it's very sad that these kids got killed by their dad, but bad things happen all the time, and we're going to make jokes about it. So,
yeah. But I mean,
because it's ridiculous. Serpent DNA, come on.
Well, my wife researched this guy a bit, and he was a member of his church. He was a surfing instructor. For all outward appearances, he was a normal, happy, healthy human being.
Right. That's what's scary about this. And I don't know. It is possible to mask stuff like schizoaffective disorder, but the perception is people would think if your paranoia is so bad that you kill your kids, it's going to be bad enough that you can't function.
Right.
But turns out, no, not really.
Yeah. So this has been building for a while. This okay, so we got two things that have been building. I thought separately, maybe they're running in conjunction. We have serpent reptilian DNA has been one conspiracy as it rose. And then the other was this Q. Has Q always just been crazy off the wall stuff? I kind of felt like it started out. I kind of felt like it started out as fairly legitimate.
No, the way Q started out was an anonymous poster on 8chan started saying stuff about how Donald Trump was going to jail all the satanic Democrats. It was off the wall from the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't the Satanism stuff, I think, was added a little later, but still the idea that you're just going to randomly trust this poster on this forum where everyone's anonymous and this guy's just posting long strings of letters and numbers, and the idea that you're going to obsessively search those for patterns about how Donald Trump is going to jail Hillary. If you do that, there's something wrong with you.
Right. And I just can't help but to, it's we're in the dark ages. Is this, I know you don't know the answer to this. This is all speculation, but is it that we just know more now of the crazy that goes on, or is it that the crazy is getting worse?
I don't know. I think the crazy just gets amplified more because crazy is more interesting than normal, right? So I think we've got a newsworthy. I mean, for example, a lot of the reason QAnon got so big was that Facebook recommended QAnon adjacent pages to people for years and years before they realized, hey, our algorithm is sending people down this paranoid rabbit hole, and these people might be dangerous. Like, if you were into, Tucker Carlson, Facebook would be like, hey, here's another page you might like. And
Right.
It would be, reptilian conspiracy theories and QAnon stuff. Like,
well, next to Tucker, that kind of makes sense.
Well, it does, right? Like, Facebook didn't do this on purpose. The algorithm was like, hey, you like the mainstream paranoid loon. Maybe you would like the fringe paranoid loons.
Right.
And hey, they did. So I think we've got algorithms designed to feed us what activates the most chemicals in our brain. And that's not going to be scholarly research. That's not going to be the truth. It's going to be insane stuff because that's more interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of algorithms, okay, so I watch a lot of YouTube, and I get the stuff that I like. My TV has been logged into my account. My daughter normally uses the guest account, but my wife didn't know this and used YouTube, and now I start getting like her history royal stuff suggested to me. And then I got to give kudos to the algorithm, because between the stuff that I like, that's like a lot of garage rock and toy collecting and stuff like that, and this new influx of history that my wife has shoved into my channel, it started like giving me the option to watch a video that is a medieval cover of Right Round. Like, you spin me right round, only done on like lutes and fifes and stuff.
I think I've actually listened to that or something that. Yeah, no, it's wild.
But I had to like slow clap the algorithm at that point for pulling those two together and coming up.
It's just like, okay, so you like the Black Death and you like the 80s.
Right.
Yeah. I'm trying to make it work, man.
Yeah, but these people, man, I mean, I think this guy was probably a paranoid. That crazy is more interesting, but we already had crazy to be interesting. It's called fiction. It's just weird that I don't know. It is terrifying. It is ultimately terrifying that this guy was obviously mentally ill. So maybe these things are preying on the mentally ill.
Oh, I think definitely. I think, most QAnon people aren't going to do anything about it. Because, at the very most, they're going to like rant at their employees and make them uncomfortable.
Right. Storm the Capitol, stuff like that.
Right. Well, actually, that's a good point, because like those guys weren't all paranoid schizophrenics. But then again, they weren't all like there to kill people. But I mean, a lot of them were, though. So I don't know.
Yeah. Hang Mike Pence.
A beach in Bournemouth, England, was temporarily closed following the sighting of, quote, unidentified large marine life, according to the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. Multiple eyewitnesses observed a massive shadow moving under the water, which may have been a shark or may have been something else. Further investigation is pending.
This has appeared in just about every awesome water horror movie ever.
Absolutely.
And I think it is one of those things that we all have a deep, I think, like people talk about phobias, and you got arachnophobia and snakeophobia, whatever that is.
Probably like herpetophobia.
Yeah, totally. But I think that those are like healthy, ingrained, how like babies, when they're born, they automatically know to hold their breath underwater, little things like that. There is genetic memory.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think some of our fears are genetic memory. I think we are scared of spiders, we're scared of snakes, and we're scared of large ass shadows going under our boats.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they don't know what this was.
I mean, they think it was probably a shark. Which,
that's terrifying. That's terrifying.
A shark isn't in itself terrifying. I saw it posted on lots of cryptid sites because, you don't know what the thing in the ocean is. Therefore, it's, the Leviathan, right?
Did they have any reason to think it wasn't a shark?
I mean, no, not really.
Was it like freaky huge or?
All they said was huge shadow. And I tried to get some more information about like what huge means. Does it mean, 20 feet? Does it mean 200 feet?
Right.
But it was probably just a shark.
Right.
But I think it's still a fun story just because.
Oh, I agree.
You got the Jaws vibes. You got the we gotta close the beach.
Yeah, it's got
all
Peter
that kind of
Benchley
thing.
all over it, man.
Exactly.
Because that's all Peter Benchley wrote about was basically Jaws, and then he wrote one about a giant octopus, and then I want to say he wrote Orca with the killer whale.
Right.
I think he was just all about guys on a boat getting messed up from stuff underneath them.
What if a fish but big?
Right. But I gotta say, it's another example of a headline clickbait. Headline clickbait right there.
Absolutely.
Come on, stop it. You know your kung fu's better than mine. Much better.
And finally, Mike Lindell claimed last week that Antifa kept trying to infiltrate his cyber symposium, although video showed only 3 people singing hymns in his parking lot. He offered no evidence for this claim. He also said he'd been attacked outside his hotel. Sioux Falls police did confirm that there was an assault, although it was unclear if Lindell was involved.
I don't even I need to, thanks to COVID and all this stuff, I'm very disconnected from a lot of people that I would normally talk to. And I find it hard to believe that anybody cares what Mike Lindell is up to. Anybody.
Yeah, I would think that too, but his symposium was packed.
Was it?
Yeah.
Huh.
I can't access the headspace of, the QAnon guys, the election conspiracy guys. I can't understand on any level what they're thinking. And it's too bad because that's like probably a solid 10-15% of the country.
Yeah.
And more than half of one of our major political parties. So
who's somebody that
society
society general? Okay, Charlie Sheen.
Okay.
Let's say that the message is true. Let's say the government is doing this to you and it's true and you need to know, and the message is coming from Charlie Sheen. Who's going to listen to that? That's the part that I'm having with this guy. It's like when you look at Mike Lindell, I see a raving lunatic, and I can't get past that to anything that he says, even his pillow being comfortable. Maybe it is. I don't know. Seth Meyers seems to think it's stuffed with bees and coal, but
I agree. But Rush Limbaugh, Alex Jones, those guys both have giant guy on street corner vibes to me. But
Rush Limbaugh at least carries himself in a way that sounds like he at least portrays himself in it with some level of confidence. Mike Lindell
doesn't he too?
No, Mike Lindell is like a cowering child in the back of a closet or something. He is. I just look at him and I see some person desperately. Yeah, no, Mike Lindell. I view him as like ragingly and obviously mentally ill.
Yeah, to be honest, I've only read the things he said, and people like edit to make you sound not crazy because that's a courtesy they show anyone, because if you just one for one transcribe people's words to print, that person will look dumb, right? No matter who they are.
Right. Yeah. But a lot of run-on sentences, weirdly placed commas. I get you. Yeah.
Right. So I've never actually listened to him talk because I've only ever gotten my news about him from a written medium. So I will take your word that he comes across as massively crazy.
Look up him at the symposium. He sounds like just a nut, an absolute nut. And I'm willing to, even for the sake of argument, pretend that what he's saying is true. And if what he is saying is true, people out there who believe in this stuff, you need to get a new spokesman, because this is just not going to work for you.
Yeah, well, I have a hard time seeing him, expanding the core base of people who who believe this stuff. But, guys like Mike Lindell isn't, he's not, these conspiracies don't spread via like someone sees him on the news and is like, I like the cut of that guy's jib. They spread via, a tweet that 10 million people retweet. Right. So, and in that kind of situation, it's maybe a little less obvious that he's a loon,
Right.
I don't know.
All right. People out there, get a new spokesman. I don't know what else to say. I can't even listen to the message until you get yourself a new spokesman. And they're going to be all, well, what about Rudy? Sounds more with it than this guy, than Mike Lindell.
I know, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
that's the bar. Is Rudy?
He's at least
Rudy
a lawyer,
Giuliani.
and you know that he's BSing you, and maybe he's doing it on purpose. This Mike Lindell guy, I mean, he's a pillow salesman. That's all right. I can't say anything that the world doesn't already know. Get a new spokesman. Blah blah blah. Okay, I had something that I wanted to ask you about. What's your take on this pulling out of Afghanistan? I
think it's about time for me.
You think it's about time?
I think this would have happened if we'd done it in 10 years, 100 years, or I think this would have been the outcome if we'd pulled out immediately after accomplishing our combat mission there, which was to get rid of Al-Qaeda. So I think we should have pulled out then. I think we should have pulled out in like early 2002.
Yeah, oddly enough, you agree with Mike Bolton. The guy with the mustache.
Which
he basically said, like, once we got in there, as soon as we killed Obama, he said we should have handed him the Federalist.
Osama.
What?
Osama.
Oh, right. Whoops. Well, he might have said the other.
It is Bolton. Yeah.
Right. As soon as we killed Osama, he said we should have handed him the Federalist Papers. I'm not sure why that one specifically, but and moved on.
That's weird.
Yeah. But I got the premise of what he was saying. Like, we did what we came here to do, and then at that point on, it was nation building, and that was the term.
Bad idea.
Yeah. I agree, but I have a very unpopular belief system on this stuff, and I'm somewhat, my long-term view is I don't really believe in countries or anything like that. I'm really a globalist that believes that mankind needs to work together, and we're obviously going to get there with the environment to the point where we don't have a choice. But in the meantime, if we're going to play the game of countries, I am somewhat of a nationalist, and that word has been tainted by the alt-right. So I'm not a white nationalist. I'm just, and I think that basically we should have gone over there and we should have said, listen, Afghanistan, in your country, some bad stuff happened and it killed 4,000 of us.
Right.
We want that guy. You can either help us get that guy, or you can say that you're going to take care of it on your own. If you do not take care of it on your own, this entire country is going to be irradiated glass, for lack of a better term. Basically, you need to take care of your stuff. We're happy to help you, but we're not going to just sit by and allow this to happen. Now, let's talk about it. Let's work together. Let's get it done. But if you continue to allow these things to go on, we're not going to come in to build a nation. We're not going to come in to find Obama or Osama. But we're going to put an end to this situation.
Well, that's exactly what we did do, sans the, nuking everyone.
I know, irradiating glass is really just for poetic license. I don't really think that we need to nuke the place.
But we did go to them and we're like, hey, give us Al-Qaeda. And they were like, hey, screw you. And so we're like, okay. So we came in and we got Al-Qaeda and we took down the Taliban.
Yeah, at that point, I kind of feel like we should say your country is ours now.
I'm not a huge fan of like extractive imperialism. I don't
I'm
think
not
we
either,
should have
but
like
but if
annexed
but if
Afghanistan. I think that would have been a horrible thing to do.
it maybe it would, but I mean, if your belief system is killing us, we have to do something about it.
I mean, but that's true of so much of the world. We're not popular.
No. And that's
know,
part of the problem. The reason why we're not
should we
popular is because we've been meddling, and we shouldn't be meddling.
exactly?
Right.
Should we go into Venezuela and kill radical groups there? I think there might be more radical groups down the line if that's what we do. So
Yeah, if they
it
start
was
attacking our people, yeah, we should.
right. I mean, look, it was a direct attack and it was huge in proportion, so I
Right.
think it was worth doing. But I don't think, I think we should have gone in, done our stuff, and left. I don't even think we should have waited until we found Osama bin Laden. I think we could have easily come back later, right? I think we got rid of Al Qaeda. We got rid of the infrastructure by which Osama was capable of like hurting us. And, I think it should have been a couple month thing. But back then, this is all the Bush administration's fault, basically. And they were very into the mindset of nation building, which was just a muddled mindset because we are an imperial power and our wealth depends on other countries being poor. Like our entire system of globalism depends on, people being willing to sell their goods and labor for us at the fraction of its worth because, they don't have a choice but to participate in the world economy. So and democracy costs money. You never get a stable democracy that's incredibly poor. So if we wanted them to be a stable democracy, we would have needed to make them be not a poor country, which is completely counter to our foreign policy goals
Right.
over the world. We want countries to be poor. We have in the long term this rising tide lifts all boats goals, but we want them to be at the very least poorer than us so that we can get stuff from them on the cheap, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the idea that we're going to nation build is just straight up not understanding the idea that democracy isn't cheap, because it's a less stable system of government than dictatorship. And if you have a poor country, then your country is going to be less stable. So you need a more stable system. It's why we didn't have democracy in the Middle Ages. And like when Poland tried it, they were trounced by their neighbors.
Right. This is part of the problem. This is part of why the right says that the left hates the country and the left says that the right is ruining the country. I feel that part of this sci-fi belief that I'm saying of telling people, right, you hit us once, don't hit us again, or we're gonna hurt you.
Right.
Is that we're not the shining city on the hill anymore. I mean, were we ever? I don't know, but I think there was a time that at least the general society thought that we were and believed in trying to become that. But now I think a lot of people basically believe in keeping people down in order to keep themselves up.
Yeah, well, I think
before it went on without people knowing it, but now that people know it, they're just all like, "Oh, that's great, yeah, repressive."
Yeah, I think the shining on the hill, city on the hill thing is, I think we have this thing now where we like exemplify everyone wanted to come here because America's great, and they therefore conflate that greatness with we are a moral paragon, when in fact our greatness is due to our massive wealth, and our massive wealth is built on genocide and exploitation. Like people want to come here because we're rich, and we're rich because we screwed them, the people who want to come here. So like, or the people who already were here, so I think we're great. I think we're the city on the hill. I think the city on the hill is built on a mausoleum of bones.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true for all societies at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, you're either rich and built on a mausoleum, or you're not rich and you're built on a mausoleum, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's better to be the former, but that's not to say that all countries have equal sins. Uganda,
no, of course not.
Uganda never became the British Empire and colonized like 2/3 of the world. They don't have that blood on their hands, and we do.
Right. Given the opportunity, though, that country specifically would have.
Well, sure. I mean, because every country is populated by people.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And human nature doesn't change.
No, I guess it doesn't. All right. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland. Our guest tonight is Horror Gamer. And what are we talking about? Well, surprise, surprise. We're talking about horror and games. How are you doing this evening? We're going to go with HG to make life easy. How are you doing, HG?
I'm doing good, my friend. I just want to say thank you very much for having me on. I'm super excited to just dive right into the world of horror with you guys today.
Yeah, I'm a hardcore horror fan. As a, my interest in paranormal is really kind of like a offshoot of my love of horror. I grew up loving horror. I've told this story before. It's not going to bode well for me as a male, but I initially got into horror because of the nudity. I was like, and then, but by the time I was 16, I was just loving it all the way back to the 30s and, up until today. So, what I'm always curious about how people get into these things, especially horror, because for one, I meet a lot of horror fans that I just don't get them. They want it to be real, or they're all, I want to get on the roller coaster and then I want to get off the roller coaster and smell some flowers and say, man, that crap was crazy,
Yeah.
But, what makes you love horror? What's your draw to it? I assume you're not killing people and eating babies.
Oh, no. Well, for me, horror has been a thing all my life. When I was 5 years old, I watched The Exorcist for the first time with my dad.
It's a major desensitizing at a young age, I assume.
Right. When it's your first horror movie you ever watch, it kind of desensitizes you to the rest later in life. But ever since that night, it was just something about, the whole story behind, The Exorcist and everything. It just drew me into that. And I've been hooked ever since. Horror's just been a big part of my life ever since that night.
That makes sense. I think about the things that I'm into, and I know a lot of them are maybe a little different than most people. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people who are also into the stuff that we're into. And I think about it, and really, if I try to dig my way back, really, I'm just chasing nostalgia. I'm chasing those moments when I first watched them and it sent my imagination whirling. And now, to be honest, I watch for every, let's say 30 horror movies I watch, 29 of them are absolutely terrible. And then I get that one and I'm just all, oh my God, it's happening. I'm feeling, that nostalgic feeling,
I am the same exact way. Like you said, 29 out of 30 are some of the worst horror movies you could possibly watch. So hard to sit through, but then you get that one. It's just like, man, I remember it just brings you back to sitting on the couch with your dad watching the movie like that.
Yeah, exactly. Nope. It's also the same case with science fiction and jazz, frankly.
Yeah.
Most of it's terrible, but when you get the good stuff, you're all like, oh, this is great.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, ask anyone who likes a thing, and they'll tell you that's true of everything.
Yep.
This is my personal journey, though. So
okay.
It's more important.
I'm sorry to, take
this is about him with his
special little box, Chauncey.
Yeah. Okay. So, one thing that I wanted to talk about is zombies, because zombies blew up, because obviously we're going to talk about Resident Evil, but zombies just blew up culturally and in horror movies. And, what's your take on why we love them so much as a group of people? Because I love them too. I'm to the point now where a zombie movie better be pretty dang good for me to like it. Yeah. I've seen so many that,
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I think that the lure of the zombie apocalypse is what makes people excited for zombies. The whole go out there and just this massive chaos. The world's coming to an end, and you just got hordes of zombies that you can just periodically take out one by one, or kind of like in everybody's head, it's like The Walking Dead, or it's like, it's like Night of the Living Dead. It's something like that. You know what I mean? Where it's just that excitement, like the danger is there.
Yeah.
So it's a situation where you don't have to pay bills, and also every so often you get to commit casual violence against beings that are basically helpless and are also incredibly loathsome, so you don't feel bad.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That's pretty much, that's pretty much the gist of it there.
Yeah.
I like the way you said it better.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. Like the mass zombie, of course there were like voodoo zombies and Haitian zombies and stuff
Yeah.
prior, but the mass zombie thing started
Right, that
1968 Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Arguably it started from I Am Legend, but yeah, it did create, I have to admit that as a horror fan, when I was a kid, there were a lot more of us, now that I'm grown up, people are just all like, oh, I like grown-up movies. And I'm all like,
Yeah.
well, thanks. But the kids that loved the zombie movies when I was a kid were also the kids who had like the anarchist cookbook, and they probably did fantasize about the collapse of society and them going off on their own and building spring traps.
Just pretty, that's about it right there. That's the lore right there.
Right. Yeah. And I gotta admit, it's dystopian, so it definitely feeds into, my love of these post-apocalypse in general,
Absolutely.
So Resident Evil, this is your jam. You play a lot of stuff, but that's your brand, is you love this shit.
Yes. Oh my God. I am diehard Resident Evil. And it's the funniest thing is I kind of came on to the Resident Evil train a little late. I knew nothing about the original back in 96, I believe it was. I actually was introduced to Resident Evil on Thanksgiving when I went to my cousin's house for Thanksgiving dinner. I went up to get him because dinner was ready, and you could just hear these terrible noises coming from his room. Like, it was so bad. And then you walk in, he has all the lights off, and he's just playing this game. And I'm just, as a young HG, I'm standing there just, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. What is this? And why don't I know anything about this?
Right.
And then ever since then, I have just been hooked. Everything Resident Evil. Like, a lot of my friends joke with me that if it's not Resident Evil, don't waste your money on it because you're not going to play it. You're not going to, play anything else but that. Yeah, I'm just so obsessed with the game. It's amazing to me.
So this was the first Resident Evil that you walked into.
Yes, the Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 was the first one that I got introduced to. Yeah, Resident Evil 2 was the one that I walked in on, and ever since then, and it happens to be my favorite video game of all time, and that's like with all the genres. It's just Resident Evil 2. It's crazy.
Interesting. So there are a million Resident Evil games, right?
Oh, there's so many. Yeah.
What is it that? I mean, is it just that was the first one and that was sort of like what brought you into it, or is 2 generally like mechanically a better game for whatever reason?
It was a good game. The story was I think the reason I like it the most was the score, the music in it.
Oh, interesting.
It has some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard in a video game. Like ever heard.
Yeah.
And it's, and then when you go into a save room to save your game and then you hear that music and you just like, I can take a minute. You know what I mean? So great. It's just such an amazing score all around. I think that's why it plays a big part in why I like the game so much.
Right. Yeah, I'm a good deal older than you, so video games I do play them. I'm like obsessed with Metroid. I play anyone that comes out,
Yeah.
We all got our brand. But when I was younger, of course, video games were not immersive in the way that they are today. So it's been hard for me to put together the scares that I can get from a horror movie. with the scares that I can get from something that I'm actively involved in. But that's what you're getting from it, right? You know, because I watch these things and I know that people are, you know, feeling the scares just like I am. I'm loving it. When I'm loving a horror movie.
There's something about when you play a horror game, you actually feel like you're in it. You know what I mean? Like you're that character and you have to do what you can to survive. And I think that just that feeling of dread and anxiety and stuff, I think that's what keeps me going back to it. Because it's like, all right, I can do this, you know. I'm being chased by this big monster, but I know I can survive it, you know, but it's just the fear of, oh, he might get me.
Right.
It's that, you know.
Is there something that Resident Evil does for you that, because I feel like horror games have exploded a lot. You know, you've got a million AAA ones. You've got your Dead Spaces. You've got your I don't know. I don't actually play that many horror games, so I'm suddenly having trouble thinking of anything other than Dead Space. But like, clearly, Resident Evil is a more venerable like brand. It's been around for longer and it's really enduring. Is there something they do that like is more visceral than others? Or
for me, it makes you think as well. It brings the scares, but it also plays with your head a little bit. Like when you have to solve a puzzle to get into the next room, or you have to find a key. Like I know other games do that, but it's just the way that Resident Evil for me brings it out. It's just it just I don't know. It just hits me in a way that other games don't. Like I've tried to play other games. Some games like The Evil Within is a game that was made by the creator of the first Resident Evil. While it was a good game, don't get me wrong, it just didn't have that hit for me like Resident Evil does, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I assume a big part of it is that here's my other nerddom. I have Transformers behind me, and why Transformers hit and GoBots didn't. You know, is that Transformers had the lore behind it, and you used it before earlier. And you know, sometimes you know when you get obsessed with these things, you end up like you're saying about the other guy with his new game. Let's say people did get that level of obsessed, but the well wasn't deep enough for them to chase it. You know, but Resident Evil has created quite the world for itself.
Yes, absolutely. It's created that lore, and I think another thing too is it's a nostalgic thing. I'm constantly like I've been called like a nostalgia chaser. I've been called all kinds of things. I love nostalgia. I love when something can take me back to a better time in my life. And then when I get that, I kind of gravitate to it. And that's what Resident Evil does to me as well. Is like anytime I can sit down in my 30s and play Resident Evil, I can just get that picture of me at 12 years old or 10 years old, you know, sitting down on the couch, playing video games and just having a good time with, you know, your Mountain Dews and your pizzas and Doritos and stuff like that, you know, all-nighters that you do. That's what I enjoy.
That's funny. It's the exact same thing that I tell my wife. She's just all my Transformers collection is a midlife crisis. And I tell her at least I'm aspiring to be 12 again and not 20.
Yes,
it's like I did 20 all right. I did 20 good. I felt that I nailed 20 pretty well. And I moved on. You know, what I feel that I could take another crack at is 12. I could be 12 again. Yeah.
Exactly. The better times. Yes, I agree.
Kara, do you have a point in your life that if you could go back and live in that point forever, you would live there? And I don't mean like a specific moment, but I mean like a section. Because like he's saying, you know, if I were to go back, I'd be drinking soda directly from a 2-liter while splitting a pizza while up till 4 a.m. watching Doctor Who on PBS and playing video games. You know, that's the moment that I feel that I should probably revisit.
Yeah, see, I'm tempted to say, you know, any point in my childhood, right? Because of like the nostalgia factor, but also objectively, I was incredibly overworked and I don't want to do math homework again. I don't want to do math homework or PE class ever again. So I wouldn't want to go back. So maybe college. college, I was just hanging out and, you know, doing whatever classes I wanted to do, and that was pretty nice.
That's beautiful. I did leave out that I was
my
failing
dream
everything
period
at
of my
12
life
also.
I'm nostalgic for was like a couple years ago.
That's good.
So,
you know, I was not doing my math homework at the time, though. I was
that is fair. No,
Yeah.
see, ours was more of a homework is not optional situation household. Right. So it's yeah.
All right. Well, I definitely have more to say about that. We'll dig into that sometime, Kara, because I had to. That's a good one. But you know, the
show where we analyze each
right, yeah. That's a whole series that I'm looking forward to. As far as the lore, why don't you give us a rundown of the lore? Is it unique from game to game, or is it episodic? Does it exactly follow, or is it take a lot of liberties? Is it like a reboot each time?
Well, basically, what it does is, so it takes place in different time frames, and while the virus changes a little bit, the outcome's basically the same. So you got back in the Spencer Mansion in 1996, an outbreak happened, and they're trying to figure out what's going on because it got out and people are dying, and they send Alpha Team in to check it out, and it's just a nightmare. It's just all kinds of stuff happening. Well, Resident Evil 2 takes place a few months later. This time, the outbreak spreads, and you find out that it's a different strand, and it's created in this pharmaceutical company's underground layer called Umbrella. And you find yourself in a police station for like 90% of the game, and it's just amazing how just crazy it is. And then while Resident Evil 2 and 3, they're actually happening around the same time, just a couple hours apart, which is pretty cool. And that's like the original trilogy that was really good. Then 4 happened, which was like, it was okay. But that, in my point, is when the Resident Evil series kind of started to become action movies. Right. Resident Evil 4, it was good. It had some scares and stuff, but it started that action trend. And then 5 was the same way. That one took place in Africa. 4 took place in Europe, and then part 6 took place here in the U.S. and then Japan. But at that point, that game was nothing but quick time events and, you know, Die Hard, basically. And it was just, it kind of, around that time for me, that's where the series, in my opinion, started dying. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
And what are we at now? Like 7, 8?
8. We're at 8.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because they almost turned Resident Evil into trilogy based, kind of like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. You have your original trilogy, then you have your over-the-shoulder action trilogy, and now you have your first-person back to survival horror trilogy. And I think with this new trilogy, they really upped their game, so to speak, and they really brought it back to what made Resident Evil good. While not with the zombies, per se, they just added that survival horror where, you know, ammo's not plentiful like it was in the last 3 games. You actually have to work to survive. And that's what, like, the essence of Resident Evil for me was just surviving. You know, it's not an action movie. You don't have bullets just scattered all over the place. You know, you have to find them and you have to survive. And they're starting to do that again, which is great.
With a lot of fan bases, the view is that the movies killed it. Is that your view?
In my opinion, the first movie was okay.
Well, I don't mean the quality of the movies, but I mean that the movies affected the quality of the game.
I think so, yeah, because then the movie started making this action-packed movie, and then around that time was when the game started becoming the same way. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I am interested in your view of the movies, because this is what prompted my other question is like, I'm sorry to go back to Transformers, but it had the same problem. It started out pretty good, but it quickly devolved into basically cutscenes of action to the point where I'm not entirely sure what's going on. Don't get me wrong. I've seen all the movies, probably more than once, but what's your take
So, like I said, with the first movie, it was the first of the, it was their dive into it. So they kind of kept the scares there a little bit. They didn't make it as actiony as the ones to follow. But my take on it is what I couldn't stand that they did with the Resident Evil movies was they took established characters from the game,
Mhm.
put them in the movie, but then made them back characters. They put them on the back burner for Alice, which was a character that had never existed in the game. She, wasn't even thought of in the game. Mila Jovovich's character.
Mhm.
I can't
Right.
stand when a movie takes those liberties. You know what I'm saying? Like you're making a movie on a franchise that was built. You have your characters from the game, and then you basically just throw them aside to make your own character. I
I
can't stand when they do that.
oh I so you like horror movies? Maybe you've seen Relic.
Yes,
You ever seen the movie The Relic? Um,
yes,
with the big lizard creature.
yeah, yeah. In the
Yeah,
museum.
yeah.
Yep.
That's based off of a book, and the main character from the book that went on to have 17 novels where he was the main character does not show up in the movie. I think he walks through basically, where he's like the star of the book. I'm just all like,
yeah.
I liked the movie, but
Hmm.
they
That yeah
lost the
that
magic, you know?
yeah that drives me crazy when they do that. Like I know in the final Resident Evil, like when they had specific characters die off screen that never even died in the game, drove me nuts. Especially one of the characters that they did. He's one of the major characters in the game. You know, um,
Mhm.
and they killed him off screen. They didn't even like give him the decency if they were going to kill him in the movie universe
Right.
to do it on screen. And he's like a superhero in the game kind of deal. You know what I mean? He's had like 3 or 4 games about him.
I get you. It's like
Yeah.
I understand as a fan of a lot of lores,
Yeah,
I understand the need to pay homage to the fan base, but I also understand like if you're not going to pay any homage to it at all, it's like why are you even doing it? Because
yeah,
so there's always this pull and push between that. But I agree, ditching major characters and giving them no send off is
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
it's world building suicide kind of.
Exactly. It's like a cardinal sin when you do something like that, especially like if you're taking an established franchise that people love. Like there are a lot of diehard, like diehard Resident Evil fans. Like I have a buddy he's might be the most diehard Resident Evil fan I've ever seen in my life. Like he buys every game 5 times, collector's editions, regular editions. He buys them for all the consoles. He has like a case that is just Resident Evil games, and he has like old school Resident Evil 2 PlayStation, still sealed, never open kind of deal. He is diehard, and like
Yeah.
it's almost like you spit in the face of people like that when you do that, certain
Right.
things like that.
Who are, in this world of Kardashians, they're your influencers.
Exactly.
Um, I was curious about that, about collecting when it comes to video games. So, I don't mean to show my age, but, I am a little older. But, I do get the world of collecting toys and that their values go up. Is this the same case with video games? I assume it is. Is it with Resident Evil? Is there?
Oh yes, like there's some Resident Evil, like the way that this franchise is. There's certain things like if you own and you own them top notch, you can sell them for a pretty penny. Like if you go on eBay, I've seen sealed Resident Evil 2 PlayStation 2 cart discs for almost $1,000. And it's when it came out, it was like $40.
All right.
Sure.
It's crazy how things double, triple, quadruple in value as the time goes by. And because Resident Evil now is like really sought after lately,
Mm-hmm.
it I've seen humongous spikes in like prices and stuff like that when it comes to buying collectibles for this franchise.
Yeah, especially the old games, I would assume, because we're
Oh yeah,
living in a world where now downloadables is where it's at.
Yeah.
If I buy a game on
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm a Nintendo guy. If I buy it on my Switch or whatever, we download it.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually exist. Going back to the lore, did Alice make her way into the video game then?
She never has once seen a video game.
Really?
Never once.
I wonder if that's due to licensing. I wonder if they were trying to keep it classy or if we can't afford it.
Maybe.
It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I've never seen her in one video game.
I mean, was the movie? I don't actually know. Was the movie popular? I always kind of got the impression that it kind of flopped, but I might be thinking of something else.
I mean, they were okay. Popular? No. I mean, to a core group of fans, maybe, but it didn't
Right.
break box office right. It wasn't the Avengers or anything like that.
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
oh,
So
It
maybe
was
they just,
something.
didn't want to taint the games.
Yeah, maybe. And thank God they did it, because that would have been just horrible. But no, it was I wouldn't say it was popular, but it had its core fan base.
I see.
Now, so
I think these companies are starting to realize, though, that their core fan bases are who carry the torch, because we now obviously live in a world where franchises and world building is where it's at. Everybody's trying to emulate the MCU like they were anything. You can see it on every streaming network. You can see them seizing control of their properties. Star Trek. I'm watching Star Trek Discovery currently. You can totally tell that Paramount has seized control of that property, and they're trying to build on it to create a competitor with what Disney is doing. So, I think there's hope for you that you're going to see a reboot in a movie that pays a lot more homage to the source material, I think.
Well, there is one in the works.
Oh, is there?
Yes, it's called Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City.
Huh.
So
Welcome
from
to
what
Raccoon City.
Yeah. So from what I'm getting, I've been researching this ever since I found out that it was a thing. They're kind of interpreting the first two games into this. So they're going to have characters from the game. They're going to have characters from the remake game, which is pretty cool. And I'm excited for it. The only thing that bugs me is it keeps getting pushed back. It was supposed to be in August, and then it was supposed to be September 8th. Now it's like November 11th or something like that. So,
for a release date?
Yeah, for a release date.
Wow, that quick.
So yeah, it's coming soon. Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with what's her face and her husband.
Yeah, no, thank God.
Jehovaviches.
Yes, and they were. She actually put a tweet out saying that she would like to be in the remake, and I was like, please God, don't let that happen. Don't do it. Unless she's a zombie, don't let her be.
Yeah, they could Drew Barrymore, though. They could kill her in the opening scene like they did in Scream. That was their big marketing pitch for Scream.
Hey, I would be okay with that. Send her off. Alice, goodbye. Now let's get back to Resident Evil the way it was intended to be.
Yeah, so I haven't heard of this. Is it from what you can tell, is it a big budget? Is it like a major corporation company that's putting this out?
It seems like a big budget. Now there's conflicting reports. One is saying it's going to go straight to Netflix, like a Netflix movie, but then there's other people saying it's going to go to theaters. It's supposed to be hitting theaters.
Interesting.
So
luckily, we live in a world where straight to Netflix does not mean it's going to be bad. That movie.
Exactly.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The movie that changed my mind on that was Spectral. It wasn't a great movie, but it went directly to Netflix, and I watched it. Watched it with this look, going oh my God, I'm watching made for TV, and then it was hella good.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
for TV.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think hopefully they catch the essence of what Resident Evil's about. They said they're going to do the two games, so we'll see.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, because it did just come out in the news as far as movies are concerned that Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney because Disney released Black Widow on its streaming service and in the theaters. And then they say, hey, look at these millions that we made off of our streaming services. The theaters all got pissed and basically said, you screwed us out of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so Disney, this Jungle Cruise is going to be the last one that they release that way because they want to stay in it with the theaters. And then today, Scarlett Johansson just filed a lawsuit against Disney to get paid because apparently some of her royalties was in ticket sales, which didn't happen.
That's not good.
Yeah. So moving forward, theater and streaming service will probably be a lot more defined because I bet you all these other companies, I bet you the theaters came to them too and said, it's time to play.
Yeah, well, I did hear that HBO Max after this year is going to be done doing the same day as theater stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I think they're done with that. That deal ends at the end of the year or something, or beginning of next.
Right. Yeah, I think the theaters yanked the leash across the board.
Thing.
Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I mean, this was a pandemic thing, right? Like, if this was a profitable way of doing things, they would have been doing it.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic. So.
No. They didn't do it before the pandemic because they were scared. They didn't know if it would work. During the pandemic, they were forced. They had no choice because that's how they needed to make money during the pandemic. Disney came out and said this was a huge success. And the theater said, oh, no. Basically, if you don't play with us, you're not going to play with us at all if you don't play by our rules. So it's actually the theaters collectively wrangling in Disney. Because it was successful on the streaming services. So it's basically the first, if not further down the line, nail in the coffin to the movie theaters.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, they're basically on life support anymore. Like I still like to go to the theaters every couple weeks to watch a movie, but nowhere near what it used to be before the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
it's insane.
My girlfriend and I, we went to go see The Purge, the Forever Purge, when it came out. And we were the only two in the theater.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, I mean, I remember when we went to go see the first Purge, we had full of people. It's just the times are changing. It's just, like I said, the movie theaters, they're on their last leg. I hate to say it because I thoroughly love going to the movies. That's one of my escapes. We have a local cinema here where I subscribe to their unlimited service. So they charge me once a month and I can go see as many movies as I want.
Oh yeah. Awesome.
Oh yeah. Before the pandemic, my girlfriend and I mean, we were going every weekend. It didn't matter what was playing. We just took a shot, because it was basically free, but ever since the pandemic, everything opened, it's not the same.
Yeah.
The experience is completely different.
And I don't think it's coming back. Luckily, the one theater experience that it did start to bring back that might stick is drive-ins.
Oh, I would love for a drive-in. We used to have a drive-in close to the area where I live, and people got greedy, wanted to sell it, and then right at the end, they tried to save it, and it was just too late.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's happened just about everywhere. Some of these new drive-ins, they've actually had to like build them or do the pop-ups, with the going and watching in the town I used to live in, Reading. They had like all through the summer, they had like movie theater night where they'd like do a big inflatable thing and you could go out to the park and like watch it.
Yeah.
It sounds really cool, but it was like 100 and holy hell degrees, so it wasn't all that great. But.
Yeah.
Moving back to the lore of Resident Evil, how far has it expanded, and do you consume this other stuff? I assume that it's hit novels and comic books and every aspect.
Oh yeah, I have books. Like there's Resident Evil novels, and I actually have the whole set of novels, and I have a YouTube channel that I do, and one of my segments is Horror Gamer Reads, and right now I'm trying to read through the whole set of Resident Evil novels because
awesome.
they're so well written. And I mean, you got the toys. I don't have many of the toys because they're hard to find, and when you do find them, they're just super expensive. You know,
I get you there.
I mean, I've tried to buy like a Claire Redfield from Resident Evil 2 double pack with Sherry Birkin, and they want like $70 for it sealed. Some are asking for over 100. So it's like, okay, I missed out on the toys, which I'm a little bit upset about, but like the other media, like the books, and I'm actually reading a book, you know, every night called Itchy Tasty: The History of Resident Evil. Well, the unofficial history of Resident Evil, and that oh my goodness, like that is just so in depth of like some of the behind the scenes stuff that went on in the creation of it. It was such a well written book.
That's interesting. So, I often wonder about this with franchises. You know, a lot of the time I get frustrated with watching television shows because I feel like the fans are influencing where the show is going. And I prefer a movie normally because movie is done. When I go in from the start of the story to the end of the story, it was already made. I'm just riding the ride.
Yes.
You know, but I feel like TV shows can be negatively influenced like that. You know, how do you feel about the making of these games? You know, do you think that too many chefs in the kitchen, too much of focus on money, or do you think that it was really a passion project? Or
So where I'm at right now in the book, at first it kind of started out as like a passion project. Like this guy, he wanted to make this game for the PlayStation. He made a rendition of this game back years prior called Sweet Home. It was for the Nintendo, the Japanese version of the Nintendo, the Famicom, I believe it was. And it was basically the birth of Resident Evil. It was a role-playing game where you're in a mansion and you got to fight ghosts and zombies and everything. Well, he wanted to take that idea and bring it to like a new plane with the PlayStation. So he, you know, worked and worked and worked, and he finally got it. But then, from what I'm seeing after that, it kind of is like, while it's still a passion project for some, you can see people are trying to make the almighty dollar from it because their expectations for the release of 2, they wanted to sell, I think it was some kind of number, like they wanted to sell 2 million copies of this game. That was their goal. Well, they doubled it. You know what I mean? They almost tripled it, but they're like, we have to bank off this. And then that's what I believe made the franchise like into a heavy hitter, if you will.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's like, unfortunately, we live in a world where you can't do art for art's. You know, music is a prime example of a problem here.
Yeah.
You know, the greatest songs are people strumming 4 chords and singing about a girl that left them or a guy that left them. You know, that's what those songs are. You know, and then now in this world of, I don't know, it's technical ability and I guess in the case of video games, it would be graphics. A lot of the time. So is that the case that play is often sacrificed for graphics?
At times, yes, because in the book they were actually they wanted to try to make it like first person and more pixelated, but they settled for still backgrounds. That way they can make the gameplay. You know what I mean? Right. They can do it a little better with like third person stuff because they couldn't quite make it the way they wanted to. So they had to put a still background to make the third person view work.
Right. Because it was kind of like, if I remember, I played that one and it was kind of like moving from scene to scene, and the scenes were sort of in a forced perspective somewhere between 2D and 3D.
Yeah. And you would move through the scene via a door opening little clip, you know.
I bet you that got old fast.
Oh yeah, it did. It still does.
All right, so let's dig into some horror movies. I want to know what's your favorite. What's your favorite horror movie of all time? Is it The Exorcist?
It's The Exorcist. 100% The Exorcist. I mean, funny. It was the first one. You know.
That's funny. We were just talking about The Exorcist the other day, and I was wondering if I was trying to divorce myself from the concept because, like, is The Exorcist so scary because Christianity is so in our psyche as a country? Like, would somebody from another country watch this and be all like, what? That's ridiculous. You know, it's like, so I was trying to decide, you know, how influenced is that by that? But I don't know.
Yeah, it is one of, I mean, it's not just horror movie fans that like it. It's like one of the most popular horror movies of all time. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's one of those movies that transcends just being a horror movie. It definitely is a great movie.
Yeah.
It's well acted, well made, terrifying.
Yes.
You know, but okay, so what would your follow-up be to The Exorcist?
I would have to go. It was a recent movie, and not many people liked it. It was The Curse of La Llorona.
Oh yeah. I liked it. I like that whole. Well, again, we're dealing with lore. We're dealing with the built universe.
Yes, exactly. That one. And the reason I like that so much is because it hits a little closer to home with me.
Sure.
Because
you've had an experience, right?
I've had an experience with who I believe was La Llorona. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had.
Well, before we get into that, for the audience's sake, why don't we tell them what La Llorona is?
Okay, so La Llorona, it translates into the weeping woman. Mm-hmm. So basically, the story of La Llorona goes that there was this beautiful maiden, and everybody wanted to be with her, and she fell in love with this handsome drifter. Okay, they had children together, and life was peachy, you know, life was great. But as the years went by, her beauty started slowly fading, and it caused her husband to kind of go and sleep around and all this other nasty stuff. And he would only return to give his children presents, you know, and you know, he only wanted anything to do with his children. He basically didn't want nothing to do with La Llorona no more. So in a fit of rage, she thought it would be a good idea to get back at him to drown her children. So she went to the riverbed with her children and drowned her children. And after that, I guess she kind of like snapped out of it, and she realized what she'd done. Now, depending on who tells the story, here's where it kind of differs between cultural and cultural. With like, I'm half Mexican. So the way the story was told to me was every night she would walk by the riverbed crying for her children, looking for her children until the day she died. Another, I think in Spain, it's said that she, and just disbelief and utter sadness of what she just did, she jumps into the river and drowns herself. And the lore goes that if you're walking by the riverbed at night and you hear La Llorona crying, basically get out, because she's seen you and now you're in her sights. And if you don't heed her warning, she will drag you under the water where you'll never be seen again. And also, this is a big thing that was always told to me, because I was just a bad kid when I was younger. If you're bad and you don't behave and you don't go to bed when you're told, La Llorona is going to come get you and take you away.
Parenting 101.
Yes, parenting 101. Absolutely. And that stuck with me, you know, as a kid, and now even into my adult years. Like, I want to tell my grandkids one day, behave, a La Llorona is going to come get you. You know, I want them to feel.
You're going to get arrested by the time you have grandkids if you say that.
I know, right? But I just want them to feel that the sheer terror of what I felt. You know, but now, well,
is that not the point of having kids?
Yeah,
that's it. Just to scare them a little bit, you know.
Yeah,
just a little
bit. It's terrifying to have kids, so it's like it's only fair that they.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so what happened was, and it was the craziest thing. I will never forget this to the day I die. I, you know, even when I tell this story now, I'm getting chills and goosebumps just because of this what happened. So we were in Mexico visiting my grandparents or my grandmother. And I was misbehaving so bad. I mean, I was, get your butt smacked kind of deal, go to your room or whatever. And I was just misbehaving so bad. And then my mom got to the point where she sent me to the room and said, if you do not behave, La Llorona is gonna come get you. And I started crying, because when you hear La Llorona as a young Spanish child, they mean business. So
Sure.
later that night, we were all sleeping, and it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, outside, we hear weeping. I'm talking about like insane weep crying. Like, have you ever seen the movie Hereditary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony Collette, that
Yeah.
scene where she's with that, what was coming from outside of our window, right out of our window.
Now I gotta point out that you said we and our, so that means you're not the
Yes.
only one hearing this.
No, I am not the only one hearing it. My mom and my dad and my grandmother were all hearing this. So I hear it first, and I'm like, well, what's going on? And I wake up my mom, and then my mom, kind of comes out of it. She's like, what is that? And we all started kind of freaking out because my grandmother came in and she was like, it's La Llorona. And my dad didn't believe it. He didn't believe any of that. He was like, it's not, it's not that. It's probably some drunk person out there crying, because the way it was set up, my grandmother lived in the desert of Chihuahua. So the houses were kind of split up a little bit. They weren't like close together city wise.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was a drunk person, they would have had to have walked a ways, have wandered off. Mm-hmm. So we're all sitting here freaking out. And my dad was like, I'll go check it out. Let me go see. So he goes out of the house and we can see him out the window and he is just like in shock. There's nobody out there, but the crying is still happening. We don't see anybody, but we hear just this weeping of like somebody who lost their kids. And this happened for about 30 minutes and then it stopped.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I think that maybe she wasn't there to take me that night, but I think it was a warning. Because, I mean, if La Llorona wanted to take me, she would have taken me, and there was nothing anybody could have done. I mean, it's as simple as that. That's what the legend says. But this happened, it went for a solid 30 minutes and then stopped. Needless to say, none of us got any sleep that night after that. But it was just the sound. Like, I'll never get over the sound of her crying. Like, it was the most terrifying cry I've ever heard in my life.
That's funny that you said that it was warning coming for you because, I mean, not funny, but funny weird. Because when you were telling me it, I was thinking like maybe it's like she heard her name and she came and it had nothing to do with you, but you're feeling that it was a warning to you to quit being a little old.
Yeah, brat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could have been that too. Like maybe when my mom said it. See, I'm a firm believer that if you talk about something enough or you will something enough, you can bring it, make it a reality.
Right.
With La Llorona, in Spanish culture and in European culture, she is a very real figure to people because that's what they talk about. If you're not good, La Llorona is going to come get you. So what I think happened was they willed her into existence. I believe she really exists. There's tapes on the internet you can hear her cries and stuff like that. And at first I believe she started off as an idea or just a legend, but then with people keep talking about her, they actually brought her, basically made her real.
Right. Yeah, that's
like a tulpa.
Exactly.
Yeah, like that's kind of the premise in it, and
Yeah.
that there's like the fear creature that absorbs that and becomes that. And what was that other Dean Koontz Phantoms? Phantoms
Mhm.
kind of had that deal as well. So from your story, I'm getting the gist that your mother was Mexican.
Yes.
Was your dad Spanish?
No, my dad was actually
So
from
this is
Virginia.
okay. So this is why he had no belief in it whatsoever.
Yeah, he
You
didn't
know,
know. Yeah, he was like,
right?
"Nah, I'll go check it out." But then he believed after that night.
Huh? Yeah, yeah. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
Because at first I thought like, okay, well then the dad must have. But then I thought, well, maybe he's from Spain. You know.
Yeah.
But
Nope. Nope. He's from Virginia. Well, see, here's you remember in the Curse of La Llorona when um the the witch doctor took the egg and like ran it over the house and on the
oh,
girl's
right.
body.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it collected the blood or something. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that actually happened to me when I was younger. So when I believe I was like 3 or 4, my mom had sent me to stay with my grandmother while they flew up to Pennsylvania to find so my dad could like find a job and find a house and everything. Well, when I was down there, I got very sick. I'm talking about like death's door sick. Um, and my grandmother took me to emergency room. She took me to doctor. She everything she could do. And she called my mom and said, "You need to come to my house. Your son is very sick and there's nothing we can do." So my mom takes the first plane back, and they're there, and my grandmother gets a hold of a witch doctor. Okay. And he comes in and he like looks around and he looks at my mom and says, "Do you have animosity with somebody? Or does anybody have something out for you?" And my mom was like, "No, I don't know why." And the witch doctor told her is because somebody put a curse on you, but it attached itself to your son. So this witch doctor took this egg and kind of like went around my body with it and was saying a prayer. And then when he cracked the egg, it was black. The yolk and everything was black. The egg was rotted. And then after that, I started getting better. I started getting healthier. But ever since that night, I'm not saying I'm Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. Trust me, I'm not saying that. Okay, but I will say, I
You,
will
sir,
say,
are no Haley Joel Osment.
yes, I am no Haley Joel Osment. But ever since that night, I can sense like when a house is haunted. I can sense if it's something bad. I can sense, I just have like that sense. I can't see anything, but I can feel it. Like I can feel like my environment.
Mhm.
And that La Llorona incident actually happened after this egg thing. So I could also maybe say she was drawn to me because of that experience.
Right. That's
I
what
don't know.
crossing my mind. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was one of those things where was she drawn to my energy and I was bad.
Mhm.
And maybe she did want to take me, I don't know. But like I said, I will never forget that night as long as I live. Even like I said, now telling you the story, I'm just like,
Yeah. You said, there are like videos and stuff on the internet. Have you ever like listened to one and be like, oh shit, that's what I heard?
I have. There's been a
Yeah.
couple where I've listened to it and be like, that's exactly what I've heard. That's exactly what was happening the night that she came. That was it. Yeah.
Oh.
It's intense. And then when you hear it, it just takes you right back to that night. I was just like, it's just, she's terrifying. I'll tell you, she is terrifying.
Now, in telling you, you said witch doctor. So forgive my ignorance on this. Is that Santeria? Is that
Well,
what that
it's
is?
like maybe I said it wrong, like a faith healer, not witch doctor. Like more like a faith healer.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't mean witch doctor. Like, isn't something bad? Like, it's like a
No. I
faith healer.
I definitely got that, and I saw the movie.
Yeah.
I knew that he
Yeah.
was the good guy.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if that's what the use of witch doctor made me think.
I probably worded it wrong. My bad on
good.
that one. I kind of worded it wrong. But
The
yeah,
guy's all listening, going, "Hey, man, I'm a faith
He's
healer."
like, dude, I saved you. What's up?
yeah, totally. Yeah, you're gonna get like an egg in the mail now, and you're gonna be
right, a rotted egg in the mail.
Right. Yeah, man, that is intense. That is intense. I have, we've had quite a few ghost guests on here, but I gotta say that's as far as an experience, that's one of the most compelling ones.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
I still, like I said, there's sometimes I still dream about that night. That is, and that happened.
Yeah, of course.
That happened over 30 years ago.
So what's your take on people going into a haunted house now that you say you can experience and you've had this, people going into the haunted house looking for it? Is that something you'd be interested in, or you all, hell no, that's not happening?
I mean, haunted houses don't scare me much. Like, looking for it, I would love to do a real ghost hunt. You know what I mean? Just to like be in the area. So no, I would do it. But I will say, if I feel like there's something negative there, I'm out. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. I don't need nothing, attaching itself to me and bringing it home.
Right.
It's so funny. I'm like an hour outside of Gettysburg. Like, it's literally an hour drive to Gettysburg for me. And I'm always trying to convince my girlfriend, let's go to Gettysburg and let's take the tour at night. Let's just see. Let's just drive around the battlefield at night. And she'll never want to do it, though.
No.
Never wants to do it. She's always
my
afraid.
wife. I want to get my wife to like go and stay at hotels that are like haunted or where murders have happened. And I'm all, no, it'll be great. And she's all, no, we can visit. Yeah. We're sleeping somewhere else.
Yep. That's the way my girlfriend is. She loves Gettysburg. We'll go on the battlefield all day during the day. But as soon as night comes around, you would think there was werewolves coming out of that thing because she's running back to the hotel. She's out.
That's funny. That's super funny. All right. Well, we're coming up on the end here. This has been a lot of fun, and
it's been
man, that story was intense, I gotta say.
Yeah.
But you said you had a YouTube channel. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, best place for people to find me is Horror Gamer on YouTube. The O's are 0s and the E in gamer is 3. So you look that up, you can find it there. I also do a podcast with my co-host, Gabby Gore, where we talk about stuff like this. You can go wherever you get your Spotify, whatever, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that other stuff. Go check that out. And so enjoy. That's the best. That's the most important part. You come, you look me up, you enjoy it. Have a good time with it.
Awesome. All right. You've been listening to Horror Gamer here on Radio Wasteland. That's Horror Gamer in code case. So the O's are 0s and the E is a 3.
It's a 3.
Thanks for coming on.
Hey guys, I appreciate it. Thank you. I had such a good time. I hope you guys can sleep tonight with that Llorona story. I might have a little trouble.
I'm thinking I'm going to rewatch it now because I watch one a night. Might as well be that one.
There you go.
And I sleep during the day, so it's all good.
There you go. But now, guys, in all seriousness, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.